welcome back. I'm Paul, and today we have an empty lotto barrel. We just finished a batch, and we have a bucket of rocks that have been through coarse grit in our 12-pound barrel on our weeklies, and they're ready to move on to the lotto barrel and get going on medium grit. We'll get the process finished on these ones. So we've got a pretty good selection of stuff in here, from leftovers from batches that had rocks that were really stubborn, that took a long time in coarse, and I just went ahead and tumbled the rest of them and left a couple behind. So I've got a piece of mookaite, and it had some rough stuff, but it's finally gone, and it's really thin on the edge right there. So I didn't want to tumble it anymore in the 12-pound barrel. I figured it would break, but I think it's pretty good now. The one stubborn spot's about gone. Got this striped rock that we found locally. I don't know what it is exactly. And it's got a few little like cracks in it that I can't really get rid of unless I cut it up. And the only reason I really like it because of the size and all the bands. So we're going to tumble it like it is. We've got this big piece of white quartz. It's got one little dirty spot there, but I can see that it goes down in there a long way. So I'd either have to cut that off or do something with it. And I think I like it the way it is. It's a nice, big, really pure white piece of quartz. So we'll see how that turns out. Some random stuff I don't know. I got one more piece of my polychrome jasper. We just finished a batch of this, and there was one left, or a couple left, but I think this might be the only one in this batch. Another one here. I don't know what it is. It almost looks like kind of like smoky quartz or something. I'm not even sure where that one came from. We've got a whole bunch of little pieces of petrified wood. We bought some petrified woods, just some miscellaneous stuff from a rock shop out of, I think it's Idaho, and we cut it up, and there's been some of it slowly coming out of our 12-pound barrel every week. There's actually quite a bit of that in here. A lot of petrified wood. That one's something else. Another piece that kind of looks like smoky quartz or something. But all of this stuff is all more petrified wood. There was a couple different, I don't know if they're different types of wood or whatever minerals were around when it got petrified that changes the color or what does that, but there's some pretty cool different colors and designs in those. Got another piece. I'm not 100% sure what this is. It kind of looks like chalcedony, but I don't really think it is, but I'm not sure. What else we got here? Some of this has been in here a while, so I forget what's all in here. Oh, we've got this big flat rock that we found locally, and another one I don't know what it is, and I don't know if it'll even polish, but it did pretty good in the coarse grit. And a lot of times after I run medium grit on the lotto, I can kind of tell if it looks like it's going to polish up or not. There's some more, a couple pieces of petrified wood and a couple red rocks. And then we got another one that looks like maybe just quartz or possibly girt. I think it's more transparent than girt would be, so it's probably just some quartz. And there's another piece of mookaite. A little bit of red and white and yellow going on that one. Another piece of quartz, it looks like. And some more petrified woods. Some other things. I've got this rock here that I don't know what it is, but it's really long and narrow. And I'm afraid that it's going to pop the lid off of my lotto. But I'm running the rubber band on the lid now. I might leave it out for now. I'm not sure what to do with that one. I'm just afraid it's going to be popping the lid off my lotto and I'm going to fight it. There's a whole bunch of, there's one red rock and a bunch more petrified wood. You can see all the wood grain on them. Really dark piece of petrified wood. And we got some kind of, I'm not even sure what to call that one. That's another piece of petrified wood. This piece of petrified wood that we cut up, it's got a pretty cool pattern to it. Such a light colored wood, and I don't know, like I say, if it has to do with the minerals or if it has more to do with what kind of wood it was. But that's a small little piece of chalcedony. It's got some white marks in it. What else do we got here? We got a whole bunch of littles in here. I got some jars that we put littles in, and I've just been stacking all the littles instead of throwing them away or anything. They end up in these miscellaneous batches, and a lot of them just end up staying in my ceramic, and they'll be used as filler. But I try to go through the ceramic and pick most of them out. They shine up. They're just little, but they look good in our little jars. We got a little bit of petrified wood, and there's a couple little pieces of amethyst you can see there. And they're not really worth wasting our time, but we might as well put them in. They already ran through coarse grit and are ready to go. All right, so that's all of that. We're going to need a little ceramic media for sure. And this being medium grit, that's the coarsest grit I use in my lotto. And I basically only use this ceramic in my lotto. So when it comes to the medium grit stage, there's no chances of cross-contamination of another grit, because this just came out of polish. So the only thing that would be in there would be polish. So we don't have to worry about that. Get the water dumped out so everything's wet. No standing water. We might need a little bit more ceramic media, but we'll add it after we get it rolling. We'll get the camera set up on the lotto, and we'll get the grid in, and we'll get it rolling. All right, we're all set up on the lotto here. I've kind of been changing up my procedure just a little bit, because on the medium grit, it's the most aggressive grit I run on the lotto, and it creates more rock dust because it's the most aggressive grit. And also you use 2 tablespoons compared to the other things you use a half a teaspoon. So a lot of times on the medium, I'll have a hard time getting it to roll for 2 or 3 days. So what I've been doing is, instead of doing 2 tablespoons, I'll do 1 tablespoon, and I'll run it for a day, and then I wash it and clean it all up, and then I'll put it back in and do another day on the medium grit with 1 tablespoon again. So I'm gonna go through the process of writing up my procedure I've been using and get it in the I'll attach it on the comments when I figure out how to do that. But that's kind of been my new process. So we'll go for a day. We'll wash it again tomorrow, and then we'll do another day run. I might try to get it to go like a day and a half, because it seems like about that point is when I really struggle keeping it rolling. So we'll get it going, and we'll be back with it after it's been for a day, day and a half, something like that, and we'll do another day or day and a half run on the medium grit. Oh, my thing's off. Yeah, we're definitely going to have to add some more ceramic media, but I can do that here in a minute. All right, I'll get some more media put in there, and we'll let it go for at least a day, and I'll check it a few times a day for water to make sure it's still wet enough to keep rolling, and we'll be back tomorrow for another one. All right, this mixed batch went 2 one-day runs on medium grit in the lotto, and when I was done, I just dumped them, and rinsed the barrel out, put them back in with borax, and I just did a quick burnish because I just finished. I've kind of been trying to hone my process a little bit, and I used to do 3 days all the time on my stages, and I kind of backed off to 2, but I've kind of just come to the conclusion that I'm really not in that big of a hurry most times, and I've been doing 3 again, and it seems like the rocks turn out just a little bit better. So I'm going to go back to doing 3 days on the 500 and the 1000 and the polish. So we're ready to rinse these back off. We'll rinse them all up, clean the barrel and the rocks. They just got done with the burnish cycle, and we'll be ready to get back on the lotto with the 500 grit. Oh, I got the water off. Sorry about that. Had the hose cut off. Alright, that's what everything's looking like. There isn't anything too special in this batch. It's just some random stuff that we had. A lot of petrified wood, leftover polychrome jasper, and a leftover leucite, and some other things, some quartz. So everything looks pretty nice. I'll go ahead and wash them up better, and I'll clean the barrel up again, and we'll get it set up on the Lotto, and we'll get going to the next stage. Alright, everything's ready to go on the Lotto for 500 grit. It'll be a half a teaspoon of grit and a tablespoon of borax. Alright, and we'll just keep adding water whenever it needs it and keep it going for 3 days. So I'll be back to go to the next stage. Alright, these ones have ran in 500 for 3 days, and I dumped them and rinsed them all off and put them back in the barrel, and I just ran a burnish cycle on them for about a couple hours. On the burnish, I just run a tablespoon of borax and run it for a few hours just to make sure the barrel's good and clean, and if there's any cracks or crevices, you clean all the grit out of it before you move on to the next stage. Well, nothing really changes too much other than getting shinier and shinier, but they always look shiny when they're wet. But that's what everything looks like after the 500 grit. I figured we'd take a look at them before we set them on got them going on the 1000. Everything looks real nice. So we'll get everything loaded in the barrel, and we'll get back on the tumbler and get it going on 1000. All right, I scrubbed everything up, and everything is wet in the barrel. We'll do a half a teaspoon of the 1000 grit silicon carbide and a tablespoon of the borax, and it'll run for 3 days. Alright, these rocks ran for 3 days in the 1000 grit. Now, they ran for 3 days in 1000 grit, and then I dumped them and rinsed them, and I just ran for about 2 hours in a burnish cycle with just borax in the barrel. that's what everything's looking like. Now the rocks have been burnished and the barrel is burnished and cleaned up, so everything should, I'm gonna go through the rocks and I'll scrub anything that's got a little spot that might hold grit, and we'll get them back over to the tumbler and we'll get them going on polish. All right, everything's scrubbed up nice and ready to go. Everything's been burnished. The barrel should be clean and we should be ready to roll on our polish stage. So we'll run a tablespoon of borax and a half teaspoon of the aluminum oxide polish, and they'll go for 3 days. All right, they've been running for 3 days in polish, and they should be looking good. I did like I always do on every stage in the lotto. I add a little extra water and some dish soap before, about half hour before I pull them out of there, just so it helps clean the slurry off a little bit. We'll go ahead and rinse them off and take a look at them here, and we're just going to put them right back in the barrel, and we'll do a burnish on them for a couple hours. All right, that's what everything looks like after polish. It's wet still, so I'm going to go ahead and clean them up a little better, and I'll clean the barrel a little better, and we will put them back in with a tablespoon of borax and burnish them for a couple hours, and then we'll take a look at them when they're all dried up. Hopefully they're still shiny. Well, everything is all dried, and we did a burnish after the 3 days of polish, and everything's dried for about a day now, so everything's plenty dry, and it looks like we got a really good shine. There isn't anything super exciting in this batch, a lot of random stuff and petrified wood, but we're going to take a look at a few of the pieces. And we did have one rock in this batch that didn't shine, so we had one fail. And I guess with a batch, I'm all right with one fail. You never know what some are going to shine or not. So we'll move over here so it'll focus a little better. My favorite one, I guess I should probably save that for the end, but we'll look at it first. We got this piece of white quartz, and there's that spot right there that you can see that it goes in there pretty deep. But other than a couple little spots like that, and there's one little chip right here that I didn't quite get all the way out, but I didn't want to make it any smaller. It turned out really cool. Such a really nice, bright white piece other than that. But yeah, it looks really nice. I'm pretty happy with it. And we've got, this is just something I found locally. Looked like it had the right texture on it, that it would polish up nice, and you can see it's got a fracture that runs right there, and it runs all the way along there and all the way around this side, and most of the way down this side comes in over here and over there. So that top looks like it could just pop off of there, but some of it didn't polish up as well as some of the other things we do, but it turned out pretty nice for the most part for some local. I don't get to do a lot of rock hounding, so whenever I actually find something that looks like it might polish, I'm pretty excited when it turns out okay like that. We've got one random piece of mookaite that we ran a batch, and this one had some spots on it that it was being stubborn. It didn't want to clean up to go to medium grit for a long time, but it ended up getting so thin on this edge that you can see it chipped right there. And at that point, I decided it was time to move it on, and it turned out pretty nice. It's got some good shine to it. I've got another piece that I found locally, and it's got a lot of fractures in it, but obviously all the bands are or stripes, I guess you might call them, maybe not bands, but the stripes are what drew it to my eye. And it's a pretty good size rock. It has a nice shine on it. And other than the fractures, it looks real nice, but that'll probably stick around in our collection just because it's kind of keep the local ones that I found separate from some of the things that we've bought. And then there's some petrified wood that, well, I guess we'll look at this one next. I got one piece of polychrome jasper, and we ran a batch of polychrome lately, and this is one of the ones that was stubborn and it wasn't ready to move on, and it still has a crack in it right there. And there was another little hole in it right here that you can see. But the crack kind of runs all the way along here, and it's one of those things where it was never going to go away. So I decided it was time for it to move on, and we'll throw it in with our polychrome bucket. It still looks pretty nice. It's got some pretty cool colors and patterns on it. And we've got a few. I bought some petrified wood, and we cut it all up. So there's one piece of the petrified wood that we cut up that's got a whole bunch of things in this batch. All of these are pieces of the same rock, or the same piece of petrified wood, I should say, and it's got pretty cool. It's pretty dark, but it's got a nice wood grain to it. That one's slick. Jumped right out of my hands. Some of this petrified wood that I polished, some of it seems like it, you can see it's kind of hazy there. It's in the wood grain lines, and I don't know if it's just the material when it became petrified wood that doesn't polish as well, but for the most part, it looks pretty nice. It's got a pretty good shine on it. All that stuff from that piece turned out really well. And we had a couple other pieces of petrified. All this stuff came out of our weekly 12-pound barrel that we roll and look at every week. These ones were from another piece of petrified wood, and it's really dark, like black. It almost looks like obsidian in the camera, but that part took a really good shine. That piece was nice. You can see some more of the wood grain on this side, and then this piece was off of that one also. Just a really dark piece of petrified wood. I've got a thing for petrified wood. I like it. And it's one of the things that I've actually found pieces of it locally where we've found it ourselves. So I've always liked those. I think those ones always stick to you a little bit better when it's something you found rather than something you bought. Got this piece. I don't know exactly what it is. It kind of almost looks like a smoky quartz or something, but it's got some pretty good fractures in it. But for the most part, it looks pretty nice. And then we had another piece of petrified wood that we cut up, and it's got a different look than a lot of petrified wood you'll see. It almost feels softer. I don't know how to explain it. It's just got a little different texture, but it's got a lot of white and gray in it. And it didn't shine up the best. It's got some haze to it, and I don't know if it's just the material, or maybe if I ran it in polish again, or maybe tried like cerium oxide on it or something, if that would polish it up a little bit better. But I think we're just going to leave it the way it is for now because it looks pretty nice. There's not much going on with it for flaws. And then another piece of the petrified wood we got looks like this. You can kind of see the bark on the backside, and you can see there's a lot of imperfections and flaws in it, and it didn't shine up like super glossy. It's definitely shiny and smooth. These sides are a little better, but another one that has a little different look than what you're used to seeing with a lot of the petrified wood I've seen. And then here's our fail. It looks kind of shiny on the camera, but it's got a matte finish to it. It's real dull compared to the rest of them. So I've got a little spot in the landscaping that usually gets all of our dull ones like this because there's no point in, I guess we could hold on to it. We put a lot of time into it, but it didn't shine up as nice as some of the other ones. So it'll probably end up in our landscaping. And then there's a piece here, and I'm not sure what that is. It's got that big fracture on it there, and there's another crack in it running through right there. And I don't know if it's a quartz or if it's some kind of chalcedony, like agate almost, or what it is. And I don't even remember where it came from, if it's something we found or something we bought. But it's a pretty good sized chunk, and it did get a really good shine on it. But I guess I could always cut it down that fracture, or cut it down that crack and cut that fracture off and have some smaller pieces that don't have the flaws in it. But sometimes it's nice to keep them larger like that. I kind of like the bigger ones. This is a piece of chalcedony. It's kind of got some, I don't know if that'd be like Montana moss kind of thing, or they call it dendrites. I don't think it looks right to be dendrites. It must just be some kind of a something. It's got a hole in it right here. I don't know if the camera will pick it up real well, but there's a hole in it, and there's a little bit of grit and slurry in there yet that didn't come out when I washed it, but it's not a super exciting piece anyways. But so other than that, we've got a whole lot of littles. This batch had a lot of littles in it. The petrified wood, when you cut it, it breaks up quite a bit when you tumble it. So we ended up with a bunch of littles and some other random pieces here that I don't know what they are. That one's pretty nice. I know that one rolled in our 12-pound barrel for a long time before I was ready to move it on. And then this one too. I don't know exactly what it is. It's got some stuff going on in it. Not too crazy on the colors, but it's got some things going on in it, so it's pretty nice. Another little piece of petrified wood. There's a random piece of, another random piece of mookaite. This is more of the purple and the yellow, but it's got a lot of flaws in it yet that didn't come out, but I'd have to tumble it away to get rid of the flaws, and I'd rather have it with a couple flaws in it than tumble it away, I guess. So I think that's a little piece of, I'm not sure what that is, but anyways, for the most part, the batch turned out to be a success, and everything looks pretty nice. And now we've got an empty lotto barrel, so we're ready to start our next adventure in the lotto tumbler. And if you like this kind of thing, maybe consider subscribing. We'll have a lot of stuff coming up, and we've got a lot of projects that we're planning on working on, and we'll see what happens, and we'll get out as many videos as we can. So thanks for watching. That's all for now.